I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and this is my everything review of the 2023 Toyota Landcruiser GR Sport. From the Australian coastline to the red dirt of the outback and forests just like these, I'm going to be driving this four-wheel drive the best part of 5,000 kilometres over the next 2 weeks to find out whether the 300 series GR Sport is the perfect vehicle to own here in Australia. Sure, it's expensive, it's an indulgence, and it's hard to get your hands on one of these vehicles. Is there a reason for that? We're going to find out on this adventure together, but make sure to subscribe. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. All right, let's take the GR Sport for a bit of a drive, but first I'll explain where I am. I'm back at the Chasing Cars test track. The car's got just over 4,000 Ks on it since I collected it from Toyota. So I'm really coming to you now like after my full experience with the car and doing a bit of off-roading, because we do have a sort of moderate off-road loop at our test track, which is good for kind of testing you know, dual cabs and four-wheel drives, although the capabilities of the GR Sport are definitely beyond this track. It's actually a really capable vehicle. The basic specs are 235 millimeters of ground clearance. You've got a 32-degree approach angle, 25-degree departure angle, which is largely the same as the regular Landcruiser. The GR Sport differs by the fact it's got triple lockers. We've got the center locking differential that you get on most Landcruiser specs, and then you also have front and rear exclusively in Australia on the GR Sport, which is pretty cool. And you've also got your drive modes, you've got your crawl control, and the GR Sport also has EKDSS, which is going to get you even more articulation than the standard car. And so all of that adds up to be heaps of capability for where we're doing our testing now. But of course, most of the driving that I did was not off-road, a lot of gravel road stuff, a lot of tar stuff, divided interstate highways, and then also 100k an hour country roads, and it just eats it all up. I mean, I don't want to sound like a Landcruiser brochure, but it's just super clear that the Landcruiser 300 was developed in Australia, because it's extremely good at doing the stuff that owners require of the car in this country, which I think is mainly long haul driving in rural areas. But as I'm demonstrating now, fording a lot of mud and heading straight for our mogul course, it can do all of this stuff too, which is really nice. And in fact, the moguls is a great one to talk about, because this is terrain that will really challenge any SUV, most four-wheel drives, and virtually every dual cab. And it's actually just hilarious how easy the 300 series makes this, especially the GR Sport. You actually barely feel the moguls. There's so much articulation in the chassis, which is just amazing. I love that. So it'll do your off-roading stuff. You might prefer a Prado or a Fortuner or some other ute-based wagon, because they're narrower. The 300 series is pretty large, but it's surprisingly nimble. The visibility's good, and the tech and the hardware here is really great. But pulling back onto the road, what can I tell you about how this thing drives in the places where you'll most likely use it 99% of the time, being in the burbs and on the highway? Well, pretty well. The 300 series is 20% stiffer than the old 200 series, so it kind of handles more like one car. The steering is a little bit quicker in terms of the ratio. The front end kind of goes where you want it to go. The handling's decent. You know, you've got to respect the fact you're in a big four-wheel drive here, but it will actually work with you on a country road, which is good, apart from the dastardly lane keeping system, which still works via the brakes. So it's always tugging at the brakes and stuff. Super annoying. I found myself turning that off every single time, which is bad, because it means it's not going to be able to help you when you really need it. And it's also why subtle tuning is so crucial. But overall, you know, I like the handling. It's really improved. The ride, you can definitely still tell in terms of ride quality that you're in a body-on-frame vehicle. It's a bit firm at times, even on big chunky tires and 18-inch wheels. You're going to notice bumps and shudders a bit more through the cabin than you will in a car-based four-wheel drive or SUV like an Audi Q7, for instance. But of course, you're getting a whole bunch more capability and wheel articulation than you'll ever get in a car like that. Engine-wise, I know a lot of people are going to miss the V8, but the simple fact is the 3.3 turbo V6, twin-turbo V6 diesel is a cracker. 227 kilowatts of power, 700 newton meters of torque, 10-speed auto, super under-stressed on the highway, hence why I was able to get such a good fuel economy figure out of it. And it's quiet, but when you're on it and you need to rev it out, it actually sounds pretty good. I mean, you know, that sounds kind of tough. I like that. In terms of 0 to 100, it's about half a second slower than a Sahara, this car, probably because of the all-terrain tyres. I was able to get 8.6 seconds 0 to 100 and stopping from 100 to 0 in just over 40 meters. Not bad for something so big and heavy. This was no ordinary review of the Toyota Landcruiser GR Sport because I actually had reason to be in Adelaide. I wasn't going to fly, I needed to drive as I was carrying delicate goods, and I also had to detour through northern Victoria, which is not really on the way, but what it gave me the chance to do was complete a 4,000 kilometer round trip with a car that is arguably designed for exactly this sort of work in mind. While the GR Sport is the best Landcruiser spec for off-roading, which we also do as a part of this review, long distance grand touring across Australia's vast distances, really tapping into this car's excellent touring range, high levels of refinement, lots of power for getting around road trains and other massive obstructions that you find out here, way out in outback Australia, is just fantastic. And in terms of the Landcruiser 300, I think this new V6 engine really endows it with characteristics that help. It's got great get up and go. It's really well paired to the 10-speed automatic transmission. Power comes on quicker, and I think that's reflected in the performance figures for the car. And the fact that the economy just sits doggedly on 10 litres per 100 Ks means that the cost to run the thing is kept in check, and you've got genuine 1,000 kilometer plus range in this vehicle. And of course, unlike with something like an EV, refueling it only takes 5 minutes, which makes long distance touring an absolute doddle. Plus, I enjoyed stuff like the big, wide, comfy seats, the quiet interior, the decent stereo. It's just a relaxing car to tour Australia in, and that's the whole point. So yeah, there's really something for an awful lot of people to like about the GR Sport, whether you're buying it to do the school run, for which it would be total overkill, through to long distance trips, which is what it's really good at, and some serious off-roading, which gives you a reason to buy the GR Sport over the Sahara, which I think is the pick of the range. Otherwise, you know, it's a likable car. It's a near ideal car for Australian conditions, which is no surprise given we're pretty much the target market for this vehicle. Even though Landcruiser specs like the Sahara look a lot glitzier outside with their abundance of chrome trim, the GR Sport is really one of the two flagships of the 300 series range alongside the Sahara ZX. Of course, it gets that cool retro styling outside and lots of obvious cues that this is the one to buy if you're into serious off-roading. But here in the cabin, it's really meant to be a luxury experience. You'll find a few GR badges scattered about the place, but it's really a land of leather and fake carbon fiber trim and kind of other premium looking and feeling materials that all make the Landcruiser 300 feel more like a Lexus than a Toyota. Now, I've just come off the back of doing over 4,000 Ks right here in this saddle, and this is a great long distance tourer. The seats are big and wide. They're not designed for people who are necessarily really skinny. Anyone will be able to fit in these chairs, but they're comfortable and supportive, and you can do 1,000 Ks in a day in this car and be fine, partially because there's lots of electric adjustment, there's seat heating, but more importantly, cooling for Australia, steering wheel heating too. In terms of tech, we've got a big 12-inch screen up here on the dash. It's a little bit fuzzy in terms of resolution, but it works as you expect. You still got to plug in your phone though for smartphone mirroring. Traditional gauges in front of us, they're handsome and clean, and you can see a bunch of trip, media, navigation and settings systems in the digital screen between them. The steering wheel itself is a big one, but not too big, and it's clean, easy shortcuts, lots of safety systems that you can easily turn on or off here on the wheel. No paddle shifters though. The 10-speed auto is driven entirely through this big, broad leather shifter in the center next to your drive mode selection too. Some other features that are worth knowing about: you get a small sunroof in this car, wireless phone charging that works pretty reliably, big cup holders, and a cool box you can open from either side, and that really works well. It'll keep your drinks nice and cold on a long trip, even in near 40-degree summer weather, like what I was driving through. Now, the GR Sport is only a 5-seater, like the GX and the Sahara ZX, so if you do need a third row, this isn't going to be the Landcruiser for you. You're going to need a VX, Sahara, or a GXL. But for 5 people, the accommodation on offer is good, but not great. It's actually not massive back here. As you can see, I fit perfectly as a 6-footer behind myself, but I think when you see the size of a Landcruiser on the road, you kind of think it's going to be a little bit bigger inside than it is. So you'll have to test it with your family to see if it's got enough room for you in the cabin. Now the seats are comfy though. You can see they've got split recline on both sides, so you can get reasonably comfortable for a little nap on a long road trip. Big air vents, seat cooling and ventilation in the back, awesome feature. Lots of grab handles for off-roading, lots of air vents as well. You don't have rear seat entertainment in this car like you do in the Sahara. That doesn't matter because everyone's got an iPad now anyway. Flip down armrest here with cup holders too, and you got your seat back pockets, perfect for storing your chasing cars. Number plates and all the carpets, interestingly, are really plush pile. If you are going to use the GR Sport to go off-road, you're going to want to replace those with rubber mats pretty quickly, I reckon. Moving around the back, the GR Sport has a nice clean design. It looks pretty mean and it pairs well with the graphite grey in my eyes, but you can get bright red, which I think is pretty cool. I think I would probably do that. But you're going to see your blacked out Landcruiser badge and your big GR Sport emblem here. Of course, we've got a power tailgate. It's going to beep all the way up. Bonk, probably to avoid that happening. Once the door is open, you've got a big square boot. This is a classic Landcruiser boot. It's just that unlike the 200 series, you don't have to deal with seats kind of tacked up on the wall. Of course, this is not a 7-seater anyway. Underneath this floor, instead, you're going to find your toolkit, a little bit of extra storage, and you've got an underslung full-size spare, obviously the kind of confidence you want in a car like this. Some funny stuff though, you still actually have the cup holders as if it was a third row Landcruiser, which is kind of funny. You can fold all these seats down and make it into a van if you want to, or you can close this boot or close it and lock the car and just walk away, which we should do now, because last thing before we go for a bit of an epic drive with this thing and I take you through everything I did with the car is to talk about what it's going to cost you on an ongoing basis. When it comes to running costs, I've got quite a lot of confidence in the numbers that I can give you, because putting so many Ks on this particular car and keeping all my receipts, I was able to go off and do the maths about the precise fuel consumption of the 3.3 diesel under the bonnet of this baby, and it's pretty good. Toyota claims about 9 for the Landcruiser 300 and it delivers about 10. In fact, it sat right on 10 flat and it was very difficult to move the fuel economy off that point, and it was reflective of the actual working out of the consumption with maths as well as what was on the trip computer. So personally, I think that's pretty impressive, driving mainly at fairly high speeds on country roads. This thing consumes not too much fuel and it's going to give you a theoretical range of over 1,000 kilometers as well, which makes it nice and flexible for driving here in Australia. Now, when it comes to servicing, you still have to service these things every 6 months or 10,000 Ks, so a little bit shorter than something like a Kluger if you're coming from a car-based SUV. And Toyota has a cap price servicing program, but it only gives you 3 years of cap price servicing, or 6 services under that cap price model, and it's going to set you back $2,400 for 3 years, so kind of expensive to maintain this car. In terms of insurance, in the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer spent $1,389 to comprehensively insure a new Landcruiser. Everybody's situation varies, and your premium will vary based on things insurers take into account, like where you live, how you garage the car, and your driving history. And last but not least, it's got a 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty. So that's my comprehensive review of the 2023 Toyota Landcruiser GR Sport. This is one of those rare vehicles where it's incredibly obvious that Australia was a very high priority in the development of this car, because take it out of the city and the Landcruiser just comes into its own in the Australian outback. Those are my opinions. I'm keen to know yours, so let me know down below the video in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell if you like this video and want to see more of it. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.